Welcome to Steve Outdoors. I'm Steve, and today we have a history of the Gewehr 98 battle rifle. This was Germany's primary battle rifle of World War I and kind of World War II, and I'll explain that little cryptic comment later on in the video. So some obvious facts first. The G98, as I'm going to occasionally refer to it, was designed by Mauser, arguably one of the greatest weapons designers of the last 200 years. And it features an action that the Mausers are famed for. So obviously it's a bolt action rifle, as you can see here. It has an internal 5-round magazine. You can see the bottom of the butt plate here, or the magazine plate here. And it fires the 8mm Mauser round, which you can see right there. Specifically, it's known as, if you want to be technical, 7.92 by, let me just check my notes, 57mm. So the history of the Gewehr 98 actually begins in the 1890s when Paul Mauser started introducing a series of rifles using his now revolutionary action. It replaced the Gewehr 1888 rifle in 1898, hence the name Gewehr 88, rifle 88, and it almost immediately saw action about a year later in the Boxer Rebellion in China. It wasn't until World War I, however, that the rifle saw widespread use by the German military in a conflict. The Gewehr 98 kind of illustrates the old sayings that generals tend to fight the next war with the last war's tactics. And you can see that on this rifle because it employs what's called the Langvizier sight. And we'll attempt to, you can see this roller coaster sight. That's called the Langvizier sight, or long sight in English. And although you can't see it on camera probably, the rifle actually begins its sights at 400 meters. It was originally 200 meters when the rifle rolled out in 1898, but it was changed to a 400-yard sight when a new type of ammunition was introduced in 1905. That's an incredible distance. Most battle sights today are anywhere from 100 to 300 yards. The rifle is also long. Again, I keep doing this in videos. I'm not sure if it actually conveys how long this damn thing is, but it's pretty long. You know how rifles tended to be in the late 19th century. So everything about this rifle reeks of not seeing that warfare was radically going to change in World War I. And you can't blame the generals for that because I don't think really very many people anticipated the rise of trench warfare. Instead of the mobile warfare that the colonial powers like Germany experienced in places like Africa, trench warfare threw all those old tactics and a lot of the equipment with it out. Long rifles like the Gewehr 98 made combat in trenches very difficult, particularly once you added the bayonet, which was kind of standard practice in that type of combat. And instead of shooting at an enemy hundreds of yards away, like you might have done on the veldt in Africa or something like that, trenches could be as close as a few dozen yards away. The rifle was built for another time, frankly. That said, it's still a pretty darn good rifle. The Mauser action is smooth. Oh, okay, it was at the end. Smooth, and it's absolutely bulletproof. And it fires, as you probably can tell, a fairly powerful round. This would be a full power cartridge. The action is simple, but it was designed in a way to prevent a lot of the problems that bolt-action rifles tend to have. The Gewehr 98 was so successful that other countries outright stole design features from it, including the Americans with their M1903 Springfield rifle, who ironically they actually had to pay Mauser a royalty on every rifle that they produced up until about 1908, 1909, somewhere around there. And the Japanese took a lot of design elements as well with their Type 38 and Type 99 rifles. I did a video on the Type 38 a couple weeks ago. Feel free to check that out on the channel. So I mentioned earlier that it was kind of used during World War II. It was so successful that the Germans themselves kept using it well after World War One. History aficionados will be more than happy to tell you that the primary German rifle during World War II was the K98K, Carabiner 98. That name should kind of give you a clue as to its origins. Carabiner, because it was a short rifle, shorter, and 98 because it was, outside of a few differences like a different sight, it was a Gewehr 98. That's really all it was. And there were even a few Gewehr 98s that were used during World War II, unmodified, unmolested. They fired essentially the same cartridge, so they were interchangeable in that sense. There were a few variants of the Gewehr 98 that were produced. There was a sniper rifle, which could either come with a 2.5 or 3 magnification scope. And there were some carbine versions for mounted troops, the Carabiner 98A and B, if I recall correctly. Those were for mounted troops, like I said. Another one of those pre-World War I tactics, which kind of got a reality check during this First World War and its trench combat on the Western Front. The rifle was also used by a number of countries around the world, like the Ottoman Empire, Czechoslovakia, and a pile of countries either produced or had German manufacturers produce variants of the rifle, and they were used by everyone from Serbia all the way to Brazil. I don't bring up legacy often in these videos, but this rifle has quite a legacy. Mauser action rifles are still being made today, primarily for sporting, for hunting and all that stuff. Which would be well over a century after Paul Mauser introduced his first rifle with the Mauser action. And you can even buy modernized M98 rifles today by Mauser, which essentially use the exact same action the Gewehr 98 uses. That's a hell of a legacy. There are not a lot of rifles introduced in the 1890s which are still being used today. This and the Russian M91, which of course later kind of became the M9130 with some modifications, are really the only two rifles which are still being used today. The M91 is actually still being used in conflict today in parts of the Ukraine, Crimea situation, in the Middle East. There's still, I'm sure, quite a few M91s and M9130s being used. Hell, they're still using Sturmgewehrs, the German assault rifle from World War II, in the Syrian conflict. My rifle here, it was manufactured in Oberndorf in 1917. I haven't even fired this rifle yet. You're actually seeing this video before I even take its first shot. So I have absolutely no idea how this thing fires. I've got targets set out for 50 yards. And God willing, with a 400-yard sight, I have no idea where these rounds are actually going to land. So wish me luck. At any rate, thank you very much for joining me. Happy shooting, safe shooting.